Thanks again to everyone for being here in this third day of our Black and Brown dialogue. We thought that having standos, what are the been taking place here in Chicago for some years now is the Multicultural Leadership Academy, a project of the Latino Policy Forum. And we wanted to bring the director of this program, Nicole Ward, and also some of the ex-alumni of the academy to talk about their experience. And when I first talked to them, I learned some important things, that prejudice is there and that you have to talk about it. That is one of the first things you have to be able to do, to say what are your thoughts about the other community, and then to open yourself to really know them, and then to advance and be one with them. So this is what we're going to talk about today, and I want to welcome all of them. Thanks so much for being here, and I want to introduce them. First, I'm going to start with Nicole Ward. Nicole is the Multicultural Leadership Academy manager. She's a graduate of the 2018 MLA, and MLA is Multicultural Leadership Academy cohort, and joined the Latino Policy Forum in September of 2018. In collaboration with the Civic Engagement team, Nicole assists in the development and implementation of civic engagement leadership and training programs, provide ongoing communication with participants, and assist with sustaining network and engagement of alumni. She was raised in Montgomery, Alabama, and is the oldest of 3 siblings. At an early age, Nicole was influenced by the history of the civil rights movement, as told to her by parents and grandparents. Children and grandchildren were taught the importance of voting and community advocacy. Nicole honors her family values through the work she does professionally. As a social service provider, she has assisted high school students through the TRIO Upward Bound program, advocated for educational and employment opportunities for Chicago Housing Authority residents, and assisted families with reunification efforts with the Department of Children and Family Services. Nicole earned the Master of Science degree in Justice and Public Safety from Chicago State University with a minor in sociology. And I'm going to read the bios of our other participants. I have here Barbara Meschino. She's Dean of Westside Learning Center at City Colleges of Chicago Malcolm X College. And prior to her current role as Dean, Dean Meschino served as an adult education manager and spent 9 years in the classroom as a language arts, mathematics, and ESL instructor within the MXC adult education program. Prior to her career at City Colleges of Chicago, Barbara had the opportunity to work with a TRIO program in the Austin community, where she supported the educational and career pathways of first-generation scholars. She earned a Bachelor of Art degrees in psychology from Clark Atlanta University. Barbara, a Patricia A. Counts Memorial Scholarship recipient, completed a Master of Social Work from the University of Illinois at Chicago. And she earned her Master Online Teacher Certification through the Illinois Online Network. And we also have Cason Brunt. He's the Director of College Success and Postsecondary Leadership Development at Chicago Scholars. He currently serves the nonprofit college access, success, and leadership development sector, positively changing the lives of students by understanding their potential for success. He worked as interim and associate dean of students at the New York Institute of Technology, assistant director for academic success, and coordinator of the Black Male Excellency Network at Purdue University. Assistant Director of Residence Life at Rosemont College and Residential Area Manager at St. Joseph's University in Pennsylvania. He studied communication at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign and a master's degree in communication management at LaSalle University. And we also have Credell Wells. He's the Community Engagement Specialist, Forest Preserves of Cook County. He has spent over 15 years of his career implementing nature-based youth development programs with the Jane Goodall Institute USA and the Garfield Park Conservatory Alliance. Currently, he works with the Forest Preserves of Cook County as the Community Engagement Specialist, continuing his efforts of connecting people to the environmental world. Proud alumni of the Chicago Public School System and Public Housing, he holds a BA from DePaul University in Nonprofit Management and will finish his MA in Biology from Miami University of Ohio in December 2018. He has presented on radio and on stage with the world-renowned primatologist and United Nations Ambassador, Dr. Jane Goodall, and at various environmental conferences nationally. In his spare time, when he's not with his adorable 18-month-old junior and wife, he enjoys performing sketch comedy and going to the movies. And now I would like to introduce you to Liset Mondragon. She's a Community Impact Director at American Heart Association. She's a proud first-generation daughter of Mexican migrants and native Chicagoan. She resides on the southwest side in the Chicago Lawn neighborhood. As a Community Impact Director for the American Heart Association, much of her work focuses on collaborating with communities towards sustainable solutions that address social determinants of health for open and honest conversations for women of color. She's an Latino Policy Forum Multicultural Leadership Academy, and recently she earned a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the Workplace certificate from the University of South Florida Muma College of Business. And last but not least, we have José Luis Alvarez. He has been the grant administrator for the town of Cicero for the past 16 years, responsible for applying and managing grants for the various departments through the town. This includes county, state, and federal grant programs. In addition to working to bring more resources to the Cicero community, José Luis has been actively involved in giving the Cicero community a greater voice by serving on various boards, such as Vice Chair for the Alliance to End Homelessness in Suburban Cook County, United Way West Suburban Board, Assistant Facilitator for the Cicero Youth Task Force, and Cicero School District 99 Board. Lastly, José Luis helped his wife to establish Cornerstone Montessori School, which has been in business for 5 years. They are looking forward to establishing a Montessori training center in Cicero within the next few years. So this was some long time to present them, to introduce them. But I think that it was very important for you to notice that they are active leaders in the community and that they have they are positioned in key places that can really make a change. So Nicole, would you tell us a little bit about the Multicultural Leadership Academy and how do you really build the space for this intercultural experience to take place?
Well, first of all, good morning, everyone. And
a little bit closer.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I would first like to say thank you on the behalf of the Latino Policy Forum and the Multicultural Leadership Academy for having us here today. It's really very much an honor to be a part of your 3-day Black and Brown conversation. So we just want to humbly say thank you very, very much. What I would like to say about the Multicultural Leadership Academy is that we actually have 10 years of leadership development up under the Latino Policy Forum. The first 6 years was the Illinois Latino Academy, which was primarily focused on the Latino leaders in the community. And then our very ambitious and great Ms. Sevilla Punte, who is our president of the Latino Policy Forum, took off a year and said, you know what, these issues that affect our community also affect the Black community. So how do we bring in 12 Black leaders in non-for-profit organizations to say, okay, let's start with the foundation of having a conversation and learning who we are. The first year was in 2017, and I am a graduate of the best cohort that's ever come through the Leadership Academy, which is 2018. And from there, my eyes was just open. I am by passion and initially trained a social worker, so my heart is always with the community on the ground, everyday work. And so when I became involved as a participant, my eyes was opened up so much more. And I really learned how I did a disservice to the clients I thought I was servicing the best by not going across the lines to ask a community of another color who has the same issues that my community have. How can we work together? And so that's what the foundation is bringing two powerful group of people together to teach us and learn and talk about how we show up in spaces authentically as we are, as Black and brown people with strong histories. And so this coalition that we have, it's not an exception to the rule, it's the rule. You know, when we come together, we support one another. It's just not being seen and heard on social media as we would like to believe that it is. So what they show us is not everything that's going on. And so really, the Leadership Academy brings together these dynamic people who are making an impact in the community, and we really challenge them. We intentionally, our training staff is amazing with intentionally creating uncomfortable spaces. So we tell every person who applies to our program, this is not a program where you're going to always feel good about what's going to be said or what's going to be done. You're going to feel some hurt. You're going to cry. You're going to be angry. But that's how you really deal with the issues. Almost as if you can have a conversation and be that fly on the wall and listen in on somebody's conversations. We bring all that into the center and we make ourselves address it. And out of that becomes long-lasting, understanding relationships where now you have somebody who is truly not just an ally by words, but is an ally in actions. And so when they go back to their organizations, they see things from another lens. I see things so very differently as just a Black woman, but I see things as a Black woman who's also looking at a lens of supporting my community through a Black and brown lens. And so I think that's what that's done for me. Professionally and personally, my network has just totally grown, and I am just a better person as a result of that. And so that is really what our Leadership Academy is, and I have my sisters and brothers who are sitting next to me, yes. And we share the same vision, and as we support each other and one another in this work that we do, that we realize we are not alone in our thoughts and our theories as we move forward.
Thank you so much, Nicole. So we have some questions prepared to trigger the conversation, but I would encourage you all to just participate whenever you want. We're going to open with our first question, which is addressed to Cason Brunt. So how has MLA transformed the views of yourself towards a better understanding between our communities? Cason.
Thank you. Well, again, first off, good morning. Thank you so much for being here. So thrilled to be able to take part in the conversation. I think that the introduction for today's conversation by two of our foremost speakers really spoke well to who we are and where we have been, right, as we think about our history individually across the racial divide of Black and brown communities. And MLA has done a tremendous job of really positioning us to understand who we are, where we've been, and what matters most to us individually, and what challenges and concerns we have as we think about our individualized identities. And with that information, we're then able to work collectively and collaboratively to think through how do we first heal, given the concerns that we have individually within our individualized communities, but then how can we partner and collaborate to create strategies to be able to move towards some sort of action that leads toward meaningful change. And so there were a number of activities that we experienced throughout the MLA program over the course of the entire year experience that really helped us to think about and to know who we're working with and engaging with, right? And how are folks' experiences not very different than our own, right? Thinking about who our families are, right? What our upbringing has been, What challenges have we experienced as we think about those sorts of realities? And how does that then perhaps give us a new, different, and fresh lens for which to engage with those who are also a part of the MLA program? And so as I think about what the program has done for us, I would say it has given me for sure a fresh lens, a fresh take, a new understanding on individuals from brown communities that prior to me coming into the program, I had no information about, no solid insight into, because, as Nicole mentioned, we're having some very difficult conversations, some honest and real conversations, but sometimes hard conversations. But I do believe that they've been both educational and informative and have positioned us to be able to do just what we need to do in order to further bridge the gap between those two communities.
Thank you. Nicole, would you like to make the second question or someone else to complement what?
Sure. By all means, guys, you all are welcome. You know how we are in our workshops, so by all means, feel free to jump in and share if you want to.
Sure, of course.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. Thank you for having us here today. And just to add on to what my cohort member Cason was saying about being together and being able to work collaboratively, what I took away mostly from MLA was the access that it created for me. It created a greater access to both the Black and brown communities in the way of leadership, practitioners, and basically, I wouldn't say forced me to look at my own personal biases and to really think about what were they rooted in? Where is this coming from? And as Peggy shared earlier in her conversation, that a lot of times we find that those biases are rooted in fear, right? Fear of what may happen if another group comes into my space, or fears that just really are to be dispelled. And those come through experiences and intentional conversations. So that was one of the takeaways from MLA that I'm really appreciative and value greatly.
Would anybody else like to jump in?
Good morning, everyone. Although my name says Credell Walls, I prefer to be called Cree, so feel free to yell out from the audience, "Hey, Cree," if you feel up to it. One of my biggest takeaway from MLA is the opportunity of meeting new people, wonderful people, learning about the connections that we do have, same struggles, same successes, but also walking away knowing that this is a group of people that I can reach out to outside of MLA, but for work and personal. And so that was really big for me. And I think the other biggest takeaway from me is also being aware of, not to really echo, I'm echoing what everyone has already said, but I had to look at myself and my own biases and also think about what my past struggles have gotten me to this point in any way that I've saw this group of people. But overall, I extremely enjoyed my experience with MLA, and I definitely did walk away with some new family members that I'm still in touch with today. I have to force the mic on.
Okay, you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'll add to the same question. I think going through this experience, this journey with a few that actually were my cohort here, I think really kind of opened up my eyes of, while we're dealing with a lot of systemic, huge issues that seem that we're never going to be able to tackle and they're just big, that, if you could bring a small group of people and get to know their history, get to know what is that shared history, as we heard earlier this morning, you can make a difference. You can start small and get to those big systemic issues. You can create spaces where you can have open and honest conversations, and it doesn't have to be spaces where there's thousands of people. It could be spaces where there's 2 people, it could be 20 people. I think that's one of the things that really kind of drove me to do things outside once we graduated from the academy, and be able to kind of say, like, okay, what can I do in my space? What can I do in my world? In doing that, and I think it really kind of gave me, and I hope others, sort of the ability to say, I can do something even if it's a small difference in my community, in my circle, with friends. Because, a lot of our friends have those same misconceptions, have those same family members, have, prejudices and things that we have to work. So I think being part of this academy really gave me tools and resources to be able to kind of do that.
Sure.
Buenos días a todos. En realidad es un honor estar aquí con todos ustedes. I'm so excited to see what we're doing through the MLA because when Sylvia first explained it to me as to what she wanted to do, I saw that this was something that was really an important opportunity to bring the energy of the Black and Brown community together. And a lot of times we, as it's been stated, we haven't worked well together in the past, but to see the collaboration, the networking that I'm able to do with these individuals, and just whenever we get together, the opportunity to share in their wisdom, to share the encouragement that I feel, and even right now in Cicero, as we know, it's mostly a Mexican community, but the reason why I think we have to remember that a lot of times the community that came into Cicero, it was a lot of the families trying to escape the violence going on in Chicago, and we're seeing that again happen with the Black community, that there's a growing Black community as well in Cicero because they are trying to escape the same violence. But again, just a really an encouragement, and the relationships that I've been able to establish and continue to work on there, it's just amazing. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So we'll go ahead and go to the next question because I know we want to kind of get through some of our questions and we want to definitely give time for the audience and Facebook to ask some questions. But I'll direct this one to you, Lyzeth. Tell me, what was your biggest obstacle in coming to a Black and Brown space where you knew you were going to be challenged and going to be uncomfortable? And so tell me, what was your biggest obstacle personal and professionally as you walked into that space?
Thank you, Nicole. Y buenos días a todos. I think when I think about the biggest obstacle, I think personally is, it was touched on this morning, not knowing really the history when it comes to Black and Brown shared history. And, really kind of facing the fears. It's also, I'm an introvert, so stepping out of my comfort zone is a little hard. So that's completely, but I think that plays into it. And I think we talked a little bit about it, the fear of the unknown, the fear of what you've heard of the Black community, right? And what you've heard within your own families of the Black community and what it means. And those were the things that I knew we were going to confront, that I was going to have to confront and think about really just the racism that exists within the Latino community, the colorism that exists. And those were things that I think just across the board were addressed. We had a session where they kind of split us to sort of the Black and then the Brown, and we had a conversation, and and then when they brought us back, we had to share what really were some of the barriers that we saw, what were some of the things that we wanted to see. And, surprisingly, one of the things that came up was language. And I remember that got really heated at that moment because as a Latina, you're like, you can't tell me not to speak Spanish. How? Because, but when they shared of well, it makes us feel like you're talking about us when you switch to Spanish with people. And it's not this understanding of well, as a bilingual person, it's so easy because my brain, when I'm around my Mexican people, and they speak English and Spanish, it's so easy for me to just switch back and forth. But to hear them share how that really was something that bothered them and made them feel like, y'all are talking about us, we don't know what you're saying. It kind of makes you think of okay, there is something there. They're not coming from a mean place or a place of wanting to shut us up or something. It's just, there is that shared understanding that, language can be a barrier in both ways. We talk about how, here in Chicago, there's a lot of Spanish-speaking individuals and language is a barrier, but also like when we do have those shared spaces, we have to think about that when it comes to the Black and brown community as well. Of like, how are we going to communicate? How are we going to learn from each other and respect each other with some of those things? I think those were some of the things that kind of come to mind as sort of the obstacles and the barriers that kind of came through that. And I think professionally, it really came to a point where, how do I bring what I learned into spaces that might be dominated by white people? And you're coming along sort of these ideas of like white supremacy and things like that, where conversations around the Black and brown experience aren't open and honest a lot of the times. It's always about making safe spaces maybe for others, but not safe spaces for us to have, our own conversations, especially when you think about that. And I think that's still something that is an ongoing thing to continue doing in sort of a professional realm. How do you kind of combat those traditional kind of spaces that might be dominated by white supremacy or things like that? And how do you allow people of color spaces where they can grow, where they can have conversations, where can they openly share without worry of retribution or worry about having to be mindful of someone feeling offended or anything, because you're actually speaking truth. You're not trying to, color, rose and nice colors history. You're trying to bring up the real history of our struggles and our shared spaces. And I think that's professionally one of the things that I continue to want to advocate for, is making spaces where diversity and inclusion is there, but it doesn't always have to be led by Black and brown people. A lot of the times when we think about the changes that need to happen systemically, it's definitely our white allies that need to step up. And how do you do that and still be able to kind of create those spaces? So I think those were some of the things that really came out for me from being part of this academy and being able to do that.
Thank you, Liset. Someone else?
So just to kind of follow up with what Lyzeth was saying, one of the challenges for me when I left was, how do I amplify my voice and this experience that was on such a great magnitude of bringing us together? So that was one of the challenges. So what I found is that whenever there's a space created at work, for example, we have a race and culture committee, whenever there was a space created like that, utilizing that as a vehicle to actually amplify this experience with the Multicultural Leadership Academy, and then also being a part of something like this that is so great to keep that really necessary dialogue happening. And then also, just to add on the piece about language, to find the empathy in when is a time that you may have experienced just wanting to even hear your language spoken or just to feel that connectivity. So how can we use empathy to actually make that understanding happening and embrace the beauty of that experience, to be able to hear someone else speak a different language? So.
I think what has been said so far has been tremendous, and I couldn't add a bit more or much more than has already been stated. But what I would like to say is I think that for me personally as well, I had an opportunity to understand and to really reflect on what it even means to be a man, right, or to be a male identifying person in our communities, and to understand the overlap that exists across those communities as well. There were a number of opportunities for which to learn about experiences across the board between our communities, but then there were some opportunities for me really to think about and to recognize, again, what it means to be me, right, in the community that I'm positioned in partnership, right, again, across the racial divide. And I thought that that was a tremendous learning experience. It provided for me an opportunity to really think differently through how do I make sense of my lived experience, again, in partnership and collaboration. As we think about, for example, right, the prison industrial complex and the realities that have existed for oh so long, and many of those challenges that exist that really disproportionately affect both of our communities in very problematic ways, again, just for example. And so I'm tremendously thankful for that. I think for sure there was this piece about fear that came up in today's conversation, and we can see how that even, again, persists and pervades the realities of men in our communities as well. And so it's always a pleasure to be able to partner and to sit alongside so many women and women-identifying individuals, but to also think about what does it mean to recognize what it means to be a man in these spaces and how we should really be thinking very deliberately about support for one another as well.
That's good, Cason.
I don't really have anything different to add.
I just wanted to say Cree.
Thank you. You know, to say something different than what everyone else has said, and the prompt is to challenges, right? You know, when I was interviewed to get into the program, one of the things I remember being said to me, this is not verbatim, there was a story shared about how there were some disagreements in the previous class, and the question was, how would you deal with those types of disagreements and so forth? At the time, well, I don't know what I said or what came out of my mouth, but I was thinking, wow, I wonder if my new class, I already knew I was going to get in. I was like, I wonder what type of arguments or disagreements are we going to have about our communities? So I was stressed. I was a little stressed about that. I was worried. And when I got into the program, there was someone else in the same group like, well, I don't know. I'm not going to take the same approach. So leaving a program knowing that's their privilege to their advantage, but you can also utilize their privilege to advance, you know, the agenda for your community too.
No more? Okay, good. So the third question, this is addressed to Barbara. What are the competencies needed to improve intercultural understanding?
Wonderful, thank you. So what are the cultural competencies to serve? So when I say cultural awareness, understanding the values that I hold for myself, the traditions within my family, my belief systems, and really being intentional about becoming aware and knowledgeable about the cultures that we serve. So cultural awareness is one competency. Asking questions and being intentional about experiences to, again, promote greater communication and understanding. And being open to feedback. Being open to feedback that may be greatly different from what you've always thought or believed. And being willing to do the work and be intentional about dispelling those beliefs that may not be true. So asking questions and asking for support. That's one of the great things about MLA is that if there is a project or if there's a question or something that I need thought partnering with, I know that I can reach out across the table to one of my colleagues from the Black and Brown community to get information and to get support. So being able to ask questions. And active listening. Listening for feedback, which sometimes may cause you to be reflective, right? Self-reflection is probably one of the most utilized competencies that I will say, even in my role now. Just sometimes information may be presented, and again, it may not be something that you are familiar with or used to hearing, or even in alignment with how you think about things, but allowing yourself time to actually step back and reflect on what's being said, and then maybe come back with a response. I recently heard about a situation where, things are sometimes said inside of conversations that we may have that we may not agree with, right? So how to step back and not be overcome by the anger that sometimes just boils up to the top, and how to just reflect on coming back with a more positive, productive comment where you can really engage in fruitful dialogue with someone. So those are a few of the competencies. I'm sure my colleagues will be able to share a few more, and I'll hand it off to Cree. Yeah, okay.
I just want to briefly add to that. One of the competencies I believe is to being able to step up and support those that are out there, not to use the word fight, but fight for their rights. So if my brown community is out there, whether it's a march or doing some type of petition for their rights, I'm there to support you. I need to be out there with you in some way, shape, or form.
Be about the action, right? Because we can talk about it so much, and that was one of the things that we had talked about, what I need from you as an ally, right? I need for you to be the voice in the room for me when I'm not there, as I am for you. And to really, when we're looking at situations, look at things from the lens of inclusion, right? And embrace diversity and not fear it. So, absolutely.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I would add that thinking about who we are as humans first, right, and having, as best we can, a standard of empathy that allows us to truly connect with the person that we're engaging with in that moment and in that time and the communities that we're hopefully work to sure, but in the communities that we're looking to collaborate with and partner with as well, I think is tremendously important. I think what I've come to understand by way of MLA is that we all shared understanding or realities that we're all seeking to make sense of in one way or another. And when we are willing to be vulnerable and to kind of remove our masks, so to speak, that basically says, this is who I am, this is where I am, and this is what I need. And what does it mean to really meet someone in that place, right? And be able to sit in that space with them and to be able to empathize with them in such a way that as you work to develop a plan of action, it can create meaningful and long-lasting change. And that's not necessarily going to always be easy, right? That can actually be pretty daunting of a task, and it can be a tremendous challenge for anyone to manage. But I do believe that when you are committed to doing that and committed to having long-standing and ongoing conversation, again, with empathy through and through in mind, it would be tremendously and can be tremendously beneficial for you and the communities that you represent.
Thank you, thank you. I hope that we are definitely planting some seeds among the people that are sitting here and people who are watching us. And again, feel free at any time to reach out to us at the Latino Policy Forum if there's additional questions that you have that we didn't get a chance to answer today. So with that, moving forward, I'm going to go ahead and direct this next question to Mr. Jose, who I just love you. I just want to say that out loud. I just love you. He is what I call an original OG. He is a part of the very first Illinois Latino Academy. So he has been here longer than any of us that's sitting on this panel. And so he's seen the Leadership Academy and the forum evolve. And so I want this question to you as our godfather in this space is, tell us about what keeps you continually to be a part and involved in what the Leadership Academy does and what the forum does through its activities and keeping us connected with what you're doing and the amazing work you're doing and, Cicero. What keeps you continuing to be involved? Because that, but you have these rare occasions who continues to come and give back to what's been given to him. So I definitely want to know from you, what keeps you every time I call and say, Jose?
The only issue that I'll tell you, Nicole, is the thing that why I continue to participate, because it is so fulfilling for me to meet these people when we go through the process of the selection and seeing how hard it is. There's a group of 8 or 10 of us going through the selection process, and all of the candidates that we have, so just really amazing people, amazing leaders that are coming up and developing a new vision for them to come together as a black and brown and working together and collaboratively, it is just so fulfilling for me because it is really important work that needs to take place, right? As we say in Mexico, we have the necessity, tenemos la necesidad de trabajar juntos, and we have the necessity to work together. In any way that I can participate to help with that, it is a real honor, and I'll be honest with you, every time I get together with the group, I feel so encouraged, and I'm like, yeah, we can continue the work. So it's awesome, and that's basically the long and short of it.
Thank you so much for that. And the next question is for Cree. So, Cree, how could we replicate this experience that you have had in the Multicultural Leadership Academy?
You know, when I was given that prompt, we could restructure MLA so that either in every community or every zone, central, north, and south, you have alums of the program doing a program very similar to what was done in the original MLA program. However, the participants in those programs would be from communities in that area. And yeah, it'd be from communities in that area, both black and brown, and then whatever they're taught, the same information that is taught with that group is taught in the other zones. And that means like the next cohort of, let's say if this is something we wanted to do in the next 2 years, the next cohort for MLA is it becomes a train-to-train model, train-to-trainer this work in those neighborhoods. Those are some of my immediate thoughts.
Something I mentioned earlier, I think it's looking at how, everyday people can do something within their circles. I mentioned, that these are things that are big issues and things, but if we, provide people resources that they can use to sort of out there. So I think it's just having those small steps. I'll be vulnerable and share, like right after, during our cohort, I started thinking, what could I do? What can I do? And she would start a YouTube channel with me. And just put it